Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about bullying, and we have as our guest clinical psychologist Eve Goldstein. She's also founder of the Child Parent Collective. She is joining us via Zoom. And as a clinical psychologist, I want to ask, we've talked about bullying from all kinds of different angles. Walk us through some specific cases that may have come through your door. Obviously, you know, don't give names or whatever, not that we would know, but some specific cases, ages, how they came there, ultimate outcomes, you know, and kind of how you, what questions you ask, whatever. Walk us through some cases. Let's start with a child who comes in and says they're being bullied. You know, walk us through a case like that.
I'll give you an example that I had fairly recently. It was a child, a middle schooler, and she came into my office and was really struggling at school because she had no friends. Every time she would go to lunch or in class, students would move away from her because some information got told that stereotyped her as being racist, and as a result, nobody wanted to go near her. Now, the reality of the situation, and this was unfortunate, was that this was a girl who was singing along to a song in TikTok. And there was a word in the song that she shouldn't have used, but she didn't, she'd like covered her mouth and didn't realize that she was continuing to like actually sing the song. She actually didn't even know what the word meant. And as a result, she got labeled racist, and she ended up not being in the school play anymore because people backstage were being mean to her in her classes. People would move away from her. And this was a girl with such a kind and sweet heart. And had she understood or known what the situation was, she would have never done it. But nobody gave her that opportunity.
Wow. And so what happened? That's very interesting. So what happened?
Right. So it was working both with her and the family to understand what the situation was, why it was happening, and then educating the students collectively as a whole on terminology, understanding individuals, where misconceptions can occur, on needing clarification and things like that. And she was able to then feel more, people were then more willing to approach her, and then she was able to start building some connections.
Is that kind of a typical, that's very interesting. Is that a somewhat typical situation?
Well, you know, that was one situation. There are lots of different situations. Sometimes there's bullying that occurs as a result of negative things that are happening in the home, where the child is, you know, mimicking negative behaviors that they're seeing at home. So in that kind of situation, we're going to work together with the parents to help support them and recognize that the way in which they interact influences the way their children interact, and work more collaboratively as a family system. So each situation really does, it starts from where we were talking at the very beginning of the segment, that we need to understand why the bullying is occurring, because once we understand why the bullying is occurring, we can actually help solve a lot of the situation that's there. And sometimes that means professional help. Sometimes that means support from school. Sometimes it means just understanding different perspectives. So it's really giving those skills to really help the learning process.
Sometimes I wonder, you know, with what you do, you're seeing some pretty depressing stuff sometimes. And does that wear on you? I mean, because you're seeing, I guess, sometimes the worst that, maybe not the worst, but some pretty depressing stuff. And you know, how do you deal with that?
It was really interesting because I literally, just before the segment, my son, who's a high school senior, was saying to me, I don't know if I could do what you're doing because you really have to take on so much. Honestly, what really keeps me going is that when I make a difference, it is so rewarding that I'm able to really look at the situation and feel great about the work that we're doing.
That is great when you are able to see that kind of thing. Okay, and then, all right, so let's say someone comes in your office who has been bullying. We had someone who was bullied. What about, is there a case scenario you can kind of walk us through of somebody who was bullying others?
Right. So usually what I will do in a situation like that is really get an understanding of their world, right? What is their social world like? What is their home life like? What is their school life like? Where are the stressors that they're experiencing? An example would be, I had a child who was really uncomfortable with individuals who had developmental differences, and they just didn't understand. He didn't understand why people would have developmental differences, and he felt really uncomfortable with it. And by breaking it down and understanding what the situation was, and then teaching him about the way people can be different, really helped him feel more comfortable and not as worried that maybe that would happen to him, or right. So there were different anxious thoughts and worries that were going on, which was the reason why he was being rude to this other individual who's more vulnerable.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I had other questions about, are there enough clinical psychologists? I think the answer to that is no.
No, actually, according to the American Psychological Association, of the 100,000 psychologists in the United States, only about 5,000 of them work directly with children. So we know that there's not enough to go around in all of our schools.
And it's important work. Well, I want to thank you, Eve Goldstein. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll take a break now and I'll come back and wrap everything up. But Eve, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, we'll be
Thanks
back right after
having
this.
me.